when those pictures were hanging on the wall, all of a sudden I don't look at those pictures and those are pictures of me. I'm just looking at them as images. It doesn't even feel like it's me on those photos anymore.
Welcome to the SheClicks Women in Photography podcast. I'm Angela Nicholson, and I'm the founder of SheClicks, which is a community for female photographers. In these podcasts, I talk with women in the photographic industry to hear about their experiences, what drives them, and how they got to where they are now. In this episode, I'm speaking with Wanda Martin, a photographer, director, visual artist, and Canon Ambassador based in London. She is inspired by art, especially Renaissance portraiture, and specialises in shooting fashion and portrait photography in a fine art style. Hi Wanda, thank you so much for joining me today on the SheClicks Women in Photography podcast.
Well, thank you for having me.
Now, I wonder if we could start right back at the beginning. What was it that first made you want to pick up a camera?
So originally, I'm from the countryside of Hungary, and my father is actually a photographer. And he was the one who taught me the basics. He was the one who bought me my first camera when I was about 14, 15. And it's funny because it was a love at first sight kind of thing. So I immediately fell in love with the medium of photography. And even though my father was the one who bought me that specific camera, which was actually a Canon EOS 20D, I remember up until today. But he didn't want me to become a professional photographer myself, because obviously he was working in this field for decades, and obviously he saw the ups and downs of this industry. So he just wanted me to do something more normal and financially stable. He wanted me to become a lawyer, engineer, or something like that, and nothing to do with the creative industry. But I guess it was already too late.
Yes, that is funny. Yeah, be a lawyer, don't be like me.
Oh, well.
So you started with digital photography?
Yes, it was a digital camera, but at the same time, he had a darkroom as well. He had his own studio and darkroom, and he did teach me like shooting on black and white film and processing black and white film and like manual printing as well. But yeah, I have to be honest, my main thing is digital photography. Obviously, every now and then when it comes to an editorial or personal project, I try to mix the two. So I have a medium format camera as well and several 35mm little cameras. But yeah, when it comes to commercial projects, I do shoot digital.
I mean, I started shooting film and then I switched to digital, and I have to say, I find digital much more relaxing actually, and much less stressful, because you're not spending hours in a dark room and worrying about somebody opening the door and all of these things. And you can process an image as you want, go out, have a cup of tea, come back. It's just a lot more relaxed, isn't it?
Exactly. And, it did happen to me that a film got, damaged somehow or disappeared. And it is very stressful, especially when it comes to a paid money job or like a commercial job. So what I usually do, I always shoot digital as well as film. So whenever I feel, I've got this shot on digital, then I switch to analog. And then I try to repeat those shots on film as well, just to avoid the stress.
Yeah. But you've got that leap of faith. You put all the same settings in and it will still look a little bit different, won't it, on film?
Yeah, exactly. Obviously I love analog because it's very magical in a way. You never exactly know what you're going to get, especially when it comes to Polaroid, because sometimes I do shoot Polaroids as well. It's very magical.
Yeah. Have you ever done any emulsion lifts with your Polaroids?
No, not yet. It's on my list. Have you?
Well, I have. And if you like the randomness of photography, it doesn't get much more random than that, because one minute, they'll stay the same size and look great. And the next minute they just kind of seem to grow and float, and they look great as well. But it's just, if you're trying to get a consistent look, that can be quite tricky. But I recommend it. It's good fun.
Yeah, experimental. Yeah, it sounds very exciting.
When you first started out in photography, what were your key subjects that you liked to photograph at that point? You said you were about 14.
Actually, now, if someone knows me, they know me as a fashion and portrait photographer, and I do work with a lot of musicians and actors as well. And even when I started out, it was always obvious for me that I was interested in people and portraiture. But I was a very shy teenager at the time, and I didn't know how to approach people to ask them to photograph, to model for me. So I started out with self-portraits. This is how I got familiar with the medium. This is how I learned a lot about the technical aspects of photography and also about like lighting, posing, styling, and makeup as well, because I literally did everything for myself, on myself.
Oh, wow.
It was the early days of social media, and I posted some of these images on MySpace and some of these platforms, and the teenage girls from my hometown found me and approached me eventually and asked me to take photos of them. So actually, these girls from the countryside of Hungary, they were my first clients, basically. And then obviously I became more and more confident. And when I moved to Budapest to study, film, first I studied film history and theory, and then eventually fine art photography. Basically, I was already like doing more and more photography jobs. First for students like me, fashion students at the University of Fine Arts. So I was shooting for fashion students, their final master collections. And eventually, so I was growing a portfolio and building a portfolio. And then Hungarian magazines found me, and then some bands as well.
Oh, amazing.
And I was about 23 when I moved to London with an Erasmus scholarship to study at the London College of Fashion. It was a fashion photography course, and it was only a few months, like a 3-4 months course. Well, trimester I got to spend here, and I went back to Budapest and I realized like London is the place where I would like to be and still try out myself, because basically 3-4 months is nothing, and at the time I barely spoke English, so it was just the beginning. So I finished my schools over there, graduated, and eventually applied for a master course at the London College of Fashion's fashion photography course. And basically 10 years ago now, I moved to London and settled in London.
Wow, that's quite a tell. I mean, it sounds like photography was always going to be your thing, despite, your dad introduced you to photography and then tried to sort of nudge you in a different direction. But you were quite definite it was going to be photography and people photography. Just a lot of photographers, particularly female photographers I've spoken to, started out doing something else and then found photography. But you're one of the select few who knew what she wanted to do from the outset.
That's interesting. Maybe it's based on the fact that I'm quite sociable and I'm interested in people, and I always been interested in people. And so even I'm not even interested in plain fashion photography. So for me, it's not really about taking pictures of a pretty girl in a beautiful dress in a beautiful surroundings. So I always like the portraiture element to it, and I like being an observer in a way and capture something of the person's personality I'm taking pictures of. And it's definitely coming from that background that I'm sociable. I love people. I like being surrounded by people, and I'm interested in them. And especially when it comes to taking pictures of musicians or actors or artists, it's very different from being a fashion photographer in a way that when I'm a fashion photographer, I'm directing everything. And sometimes I have to tell the model what kind of story we are telling and what role she's going to be or he's going to be playing. While when I'm shooting a musician, like I'm literally have to try to capture something of their personality and their character. And it's exciting me more and more. And this is what I started doing more and more these days. But I think this is where it's coming from.
Because you're so interested in people and their stories and capturing the emotions that they're experiencing and that kind of thing, do you sometimes find when you're at a fashion shoot that it's hard to concentrate on actually you do need to capture the clothing that they're wearing? Do you sometimes get pulled into their expressions and sort of distracted by the portraiture and have to remind yourself, actually, it's the clothes you're really supposed to be capturing?
Yeah, that's so true, actually. Because I have one of my best friends. He's a fashion designer as well. We work together all the time, basically. And he always reminds me, he always tells me, like, yeah, let's not get distracted by everything else. Let's focus on the creases and all that. So obviously I had to train myself and now obviously focusing on every little detail on the picture. But I still think a photo can still work if there are creases on the garment, but I don't think a photo can work if, something is off with the expression or the model or the pose. So, yeah, I have to be honest, like the casting, the portrait itself, so the person I'm photographing is the most important element for me on a picture. And obviously then the styling and the location and the hair and makeup. But yeah, casting is the most important thing for me.
Yeah. And of course, getting the right person for the clothing makes a difference to the client as well. So, it is part of the conversation, isn't it?
Exactly. And even when it's a commercial job, I like taking control and I like doing the casting as well, because it's just such an important element to the photo. It definitely helps the story unfold when you have an interesting character, because I have this painterly element in my pictures. So I have this painterly aesthetic mixed together with modern elements and rock and roll attitude. But I definitely like photographing interesting faces that adds a contrast to my images.
And do you still shoot many self-portraits today? I know you said you started out shooting them.
Not really. Well, in the last 8 years, after moving to London, I didn't really have time because I had to focus on, first of all, building up a new portfolio, networking, meeting new people, and working more and more. And eventually, I just didn't have time for my personal projects anymore until the lockdown kicked in.
Yeah.
And obviously, it was a very difficult time for all of us, probably. But at the other hand, I finally had some time for my personal projects again. And at the time, actually, I was going through a breakup. So I was just on my own in London in this apartment. And I started reading some of those books I used to read when I was a teenager, romantic 19th century literature. We are talking about like Wuthering Heights. And meanwhile, I started taking self-portraits of myself, recreating famous paintings, for example, Ophelia or Lady of Shalott, and referencing a lot of female heroines from the history of art. And I ended up creating collages. That was sort of a reflection on postmodern love and my experiences. So actually it was just, it became something very important to me and something very like an art therapy basically during the pandemic. And then I had an exhibition based on that, off of that in Budapest not too long ago. And this year I'm planning to bring it to London as well. And eventually I would like to have a little booklet, because the whole thing looks like a visual diary. So I really want a book out of it.
Oh, great. Well, I look forward to the exhibition coming to the UK. We'll definitely have to make sure we have a SheClicks meet up there to see it. That would be fantastic.
Yeah, I will keep you updated.
Thank you. I find it really interesting that in SheClicks, the vast majority of people do not like having photos taken of themselves, and they don't like doing self-portraits. Yet there are a few people who really embrace it. I was talking to Brooke Shaden not too long ago, an amazing conceptual photographer. Now, I'm not sure that she would class her images as self-portraits, but she does feature in them a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm.
You do self-portraits, and, it's a completely different way of looking at things, isn't it? Because suddenly you are in control of the expression. You are in control of where the model's looking. You're not having to tell anybody. You instinctively know what is the right thing. Is that part of the attraction?
Yeah, basically you are taking control over everything. You are taking, first of all, as you said, the expression, but everything else as well. So as I said, I was here at home during lockdown, so there was no team attached. So basically I was doing, again, hair and makeup, styling, the props as well. And it was in my usual apartment, so I was trying to look at the everyday usual space of mine from a different angle. So it just really embraced my creativity as well. It was such a challenge and it was very exciting. And, there was no pressure. There was no client standing behind my back. So basically, if I was not happy with the pictures, I could take thousands and thousands and thousands of pictures without showing it to anybody. And finally, when I got happy with a certain image, then maybe I can post on social media or just exhibit it or whatever later on. But if you're not happy with it, you don't have to show it to anyone. So I think that's a great point as well.
When you started working on that project, did you have an exhibition in mind, or did it come to you partway through? When you started to see, hey, these images are really working, I could put an exhibition on.
first, I didn't have an exhibition in mind, but later on, months and months went by, and I started becoming happy with some of those images and some of those collages. So I ended up posting some of them on my Instagram account, and I got great feedback. And actually, I got a lot of very interesting feedback from girls and women who could relate to the theme and the subject of this project. So it was just a very interesting conversation became out of it, a discussion, and just made me think I kind of want to show it to the world. And it's interesting because there's some nudity in this project as well. But again, just referencing famous paintings. And when I had this exhibition in Budapest, so many girls walked up to me "Oh, wow, you're so brave that, you are showing your pictures topless and exhibited in front of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people." And it just felt so interesting because when those pictures were hanging on a wall, all of a sudden I don't look at those pictures as those are pictures of me. I'm just looking at them as images. It doesn't even feel like it's me on those photos anymore.
We'll be right back after this short break. Please excuse this interruption. This podcast is supported by Canon, a leading technology company founded in Japan in 1937. Canon is dedicated to helping people reimagine and push the boundaries of what is possible through imaging. Canon believes in living and working together for the common good to develop a better society and a more inclusive and equitable world. Let's get back to the episode. It must have been really encouraging to have those conversations with girls on Instagram or in person, knowing that you were having some positive impact on them, being that they were inspired by your strength or bravery, as they called it.
Exactly. And even though right now I'm not necessarily in that mindset right now, but I still feel I have a few images that I would really like to finish and finalize to add to this project and then have that book published. So yeah, it's very inspiring. And, I got a lot of interesting feedback that was also inspiring. So yeah, just to make me feel it's an important subject to touch upon.
So have you started approaching publishers yet, or is that a little way off?
Not yet, but it's literally on my to-do list.
Oh, great. Okay, fantastic.
Meanwhile, I'm also working on another exhibition. So it's just I'm multitasking, doing so many things at the same time. So I'm working on another exhibition with my father at the moment, and we're gonna hopefully get a book based on that project as well. That exhibition is gonna happen in Budapest end of May till September, and then hopefully again that as well I'm gonna bring to London. So there's a lot of things going on.
Yeah, wow. I love that you're collaborating with your dad. I mean, what's the subject matter? Is he shooting the same stuff as you, or are you doing something different?
So basically, he's sort of retired by now, so he doesn't really shoot anymore. But he used to work as a photojournalist in the 70s, 80s, socialist Hungary. And now he just started rediscovering his archive and going through everything, all the negatives and scanning them back. And he just discovered a lot of pictures that back then he didn't necessarily find great. But now, maybe because of the nostalgic element as well, or maybe just, from looking back, we found and he found a lot of amazing pictures, and which is the interesting part for me. He also found a lot of photos when he photographed his nights out. He was documenting his surroundings when he went out with his friends. So basically parties and a lot of very interesting portraits as well. And every time when I go out, I have this little 35mm camera in my hand, and I started documenting my nights out. So basically East London's nightlife in the last few years, well, mainly before the pandemic, but now as well. Started again. And we just started putting these pictures next to each other. So they are all shot on 35mm film, all black and white. And sometimes you cannot even tell the pictures apart, which one was shot in the 70s socialist countryside of Hungary or which one was shot 2017 London, because of the hairstyles and some of the fashion as well that's coming back. And there's just some hidden details that tells you whose picture you're looking at. For example, my dad that has this photograph. I love that. There's a DJing, and then the portrait of Lenin hanging behind him on the wall, just like, so obviously that tells a lot. Or on some of my pictures, there's like a smartphone or a laptop in the corner.
Yeah.
But otherwise, sometimes you can't tell them apart. So we just handling this as a joint project, and just the juxtaposition between our images, and we felt it tells a lot about, how the drive of the youth has been always the same, just basically forgetting about reality for some stolen moments, and kissing, going out, dancing, having fun, like regardless any political regime.
Well, that sounds great.
Thank you.
It's an often overlooked area for photography as well, but it's so important. And it's like you said, you looking at your dad's work, and it brings back lots of memories, and it's, there's lots of nostalgia, and then comparing it, like you say, to modern day, that's really interesting that they're so similar. I think that sounds like a great project.
Yeah, I can't wait.
I bet. When you put the images on the wall, are you planning to, like, this wall's Wanda's, this is Wanda's dad's, or are you going to mix the pictures up so people really have to study them to work out who shot what?
We are talking about this to the curator now. And originally what I had in mind was just like putting pairs up on the wall. But then we started thinking with the curator, probably it's better if it's just going to be a mix of photos, and we have to make people guess. And obviously maybe in the corner, there's going to be a little tag in the corner of the room. So if you really want to figure out, then you can go up to the tag and see. But otherwise, when you're looking at the pictures, it's going to be a mix of things. So you have to really make, you have to use your brain to figure it out.
That sounds like a really fun exhibition. I hope that does come to London. That would be great to see. Now, I know that you are inspired by Renaissance portraiture. What is it about that genre that really inspires you? What draws you in?
Very interesting question, because the whole thing started very early on. I love the Renaissance as well, but I'm especially obsessed with the Pre-Raphaelites. And obviously we know Pre-Raphaelites are inspired by early Renaissance paintings as well, and the subjects and the themes and all the stories of legends of Arthur, and so basically I've been interested in this since I was 14. I don't even remember when it started, how I became obsessed with these stories, but eventually I started like diving into the history of art, and like the actual use of color and use of light as well. And I started using similar colors and similar lighting on my pictures as well. First, it was maybe because I didn't really, at the time when I started, I didn't know how to use artificial lights or flashes or continuous light. So I was always using natural light. And I like that, having basically a big window on the side and having that beautiful natural light coming through the window, exactly like in a painting. And eventually, when I learned more and more about actually lighting my photos as well, up until today, I always try to emulate natural light. And again, that painterly feel to my images.
When you first started shooting fashion photography, did you always use natural light then, or had you started to get to grips with flash and other lighting sources?
If I want to be honest, up until today, I actually prefer using natural light when it's possible, because I love shooting on location. I love shooting in nice Victorian or Georgian houses, and with like wallpaper coming off the wall, something with like a history to it. While obviously sometimes when there's a commercial job, I have to shoot in a studio as well. So sometimes I don't have the option. But even when I shoot in a studio, I have the tendency to print out backdrops, very painterly backdrop, just to have like an extra element to the pictures, not just a plain paper backdrop. I started out with natural light, and even though at the time, for a while, I was using a 5D Mark II, which was an amazing camera. I was literally like using it for 8 years. And now I've been using a 1DX Mark III for a few years, and I also have an R5. And especially the 1DX Mark III allows me to shoot on, like sometimes even on 5000 ISO. So it definitely helps with shooting with, like basically with natural light. And also at the time when I started out, I had only one lens. I think it was a 24-105 or f4, which is obviously a great lens. But when it's really dark, like for example, on a day like now, it's not the best. But by now I have some 1.4 lenses, and that obviously helps as well.
Yeah.
But also we've been talking about the painterly inspiration, but also, as I said, I studied history and theory of cinema as well. So for certain projects, I have a cinematic inspiration as well. For example, now I'm obsessed with this film director from Hong Kong called Wong Kar-wai, and he has very specific lighting in his films. A lot of neon lights, a lot of colors. So I literally just did a fashion editorial, but I was trying to have that kind of effect to my pictures, and then obviously I have to use lights as well. I work with non-light usually, so continuous lights.
If people wanted to see a film in that style, name a couple of films that they should see.
I think the most famous one is In the Mood for Love, and there's another one called Chungking Express, which I really like. It's beautifully filmed, and Fallen Angels, probably. If I have to name three, I would say Fallen Angels is the most appealing visually. It's like there's a lot of very wide angle, distorted images and a lot of colors. It's very beautiful.
Okay, right. I have to look those up. Now, you've mentioned a few times posting on social media. It's obviously had a significant impact on you and it's helped you reach an audience. But do you ever find it difficult to balance the need to put stuff on social media to sort of maintain that following and also do work which is paid? Do you find that a difficult balance to maintain, or is it you're just so natural with it now, it just happens?
By now, it became pretty natural. Although there was a time when I was really trying to force myself to post every single day and just, digging up my archive when I didn't have a new project coming out, just digging up my archive just for the sake of posting. I don't really do that anymore. So I try to curate it more. And, I might post less, but I always post new pictures. So now probably I post once per week or sometimes twice per week. But also I'm trying to use the Instagram story feature. So I always post a lot of behind the scenes content of me shooting on Instagram stories and a lot of videos of like what I'm doing. Because I had to realize people are interested who's behind the photography, who's behind those pictures. So I'm posting a lot about like inspiration. I go to museums and galleries, so I post a lot about that. I go to see bands live. So I post about that as well. So I just really want people to see what inspires me for my work. Because, in my work, I have this, as we've been talking about this, the painterly inspiration, but I'm also very much interested in youth culture, subcultures. As I said, I work with a lot of musicians. So I'm mixing all this together. I'm mixing all this together. And that's what I post about on my social media as well.
That's interesting. So it's widely reported that most fashion photographers are men, but do you feel that is changing now?
I think probably if we look at the numbers, the majority of fashion photographers up until today are still male photographers, but it is changing. Even if I just look at my class at the university, actually it was 80% girls and 20% boys. So I think we are getting there. So slowly, step by step. And it's interesting because even when I chat to models, they do tell me sometimes that working with a female photographer, especially as a girl, like sometimes we photograph 16-year-olds or 14-year-olds. It's a very different experience for them as well to work with female photographers. And probably there's a different kind of sensitivity to working with female photographers.
Yeah, I can imagine that. And actually, most fashion photography is consumed by women as well. So it kind of makes sense that there should be more women shooting it.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I didn't even think about that because I do shoot a lot of menswear as well. So maybe that's why I didn't think about it. But it's interesting because I love photographing like menswear and work with male models as well. But it's definitely most of my jobs are actually women's wear, and that's where more of the money is, and the beauty industry.
Now, the fashion and beauty industry has a bit of a reputation for being quite cutthroat. Do you think that's true or not?
mean, I've heard that as well, but I never experienced anything bad, to be honest.
Oh, that's good.
Which is good. And, sometimes I get those questions like, oh, you as a female photographer, did you find it harder? Would it have been different if you were a male photographer? And obviously, I cannot really tell what would have been the difference, but
Yes.
But honestly, I never felt any backlash. So I think maybe I'm just lucky. Or I'm just being very positive and ignoring all the bad things.
Yes. I laugh because you reminded me of an editor once asked me to write something from a woman's point of view. I was like, okay. What else would I do? But there you go.
That's funny. Did you write it at the end?
I did, yes. So now I think is a good time to go for 6 from SheClicks. So I've got 10 questions from SheClickers, and I would like you to answer 6 questions by picking numbers from 1 to 10, please. So could I have your first number?
3.
Number 3. You're a Canon Ambassador and you've had your images published in some of the biggest magazines. What are your ambitions? And a few people ask that kind of question.
Oh, I love that. I literally just wrote a list on the 1st of January for 2024. So let's get inspired by that. But basically, as we said, I'm also known as a fashion photographer. I worked for big magazines and brands. And of course, I would like to shoot campaigns for certain brands, but I'm more and more interested in portraiture. So my goals are more like, who's the famous artist I would like to work with? And I have 3 people on my list I would love to photograph. Actually 4, let's say 4. But Patti Smith would be a dream to photograph, Iggy Pop, and Nick Cave. So these musicians, and in brackets, Johnny Depp as well.
Amazing, yes. So you're strictly A-list?
Yeah, that's the plan.
Excellent. I think that's a brilliant set of ambitions. Fantastic. I love the fact that you wrote that down at the beginning of January as well.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good way to start a year positively. So congratulations.
Thank you. There were a lot of things on that list.
And I wish you the very best for those. I look forward to seeing your pictures.
Oh, thank you.
I saw an image of Nick Cave just recently, and he strikes me as a really interesting guy to photograph. I think you did enjoy photographing him.
Yeah, I mean, all these people I think I mentioned, they are just very interesting characters as well. And obviously, I find them genius in their own field. But even photography-wise, their faces are very interesting. So yeah, and obviously the hard part is they are all icons. So it's not easy to get them for a photograph because they don't need extra publicity anymore. But yeah, fingers crossed for me.
Yeah. I should think getting them engaged as well, because, they've been photographed a few times, so like you say. So
exactly.
Yeah, getting them on board and then getting them engaged with it. But yeah, good luck. I'm sure you'll manage it.
Thank you.
Okay, so could I have another number, please?
Number 6.
What advice would you give to someone who's feeling a bit stuck creatively? That question's from Tiana.
It's interesting because, as I said, during the pandemic, when I was working on those self-portraits, I think that was a time for me when for a while I didn't know what to do, where to start, what to photograph. Because in the prior years, I was always working for commissions. And then I think that's also a good thing that I didn't have to fulfill anybody's idea or request. And I was just literally on my own experimenting with different things and literally just trying out different lighting and playing around and just trying to motivate myself and creating even some still lifes at home. Just trying to find a joy in playing around. Exactly what I did when I was a teenager, just falling in love with photography again. And I think that's a good thing that, if you're just playing around and experimenting with new techniques, new lenses, new everything just for yourself, and you don't have that you have to show it to anyone. So, probably that's what I would say.
I think that's really good advice. What you were saying earlier about when you started out, you had the one lens and you didn't have any lights and this sort of thing. Sometimes that can be really motivating from the point of view you have to work around those problems and solve issues. How are you actually going to achieve the look that you want using fairly simple equipment, because it's very easy to think, oh, well, I need to buy this and throw money at it.
Exactly.
And then that kit becomes quite intimidating because suddenly, oh no, I need to use this kit because I spent all this money.
Exactly.
And sometimes it's best to just strip it all away and use the basics.
And it happened to me so many times that I ended up using a little torchlight, like a 30 pounds worth of torchlight for lighting. And, it has a very interesting spotlight effect. Or up until today, I do that sometimes, that I just put a little Vaseline or like a lip balm or something on my lens, on a filter, and that I put on my lens.
Yes.
To create that sort of dreamy effect. And, very DIY solutions can be so exciting. And, instead of a backdrop, I just hang up a curtain or something. You don't have to spend a fortune on create something exciting. Just you have to use your creativity and just play around with things.
Yeah. Okay, can I have your third number, please?
10.
Number 10. What has been the highlight of your career so far? Again, that's been asked by several people.
Ooh. Probably, again, I wouldn't say any fashion project. But I mean, obviously, it was a pretty good thing when I first got an agent in Paris and she got my first Vogue shoot. At the time, I felt it was the biggest thing of my career. But now, looking back, again, probably I would say a few people who I loved working with. I loved working with, and now I'm actually working with her again, musician girl called Aurora. I mean, I didn't pronounce it probably in the right way. Aurora. She's a Norwegian singer-songwriter, musician. And I did her latest promo shots, and we are working on her next album as well. And her aesthetic and like little visual universe is so... It just resonates with me and resonates with my visual world and aesthetic as well. And it was just such an interesting experience when we were working on that shoot together. It was like almost, she put it, it's like us dancing. So it's like we were inspiring each other and we were just creating some beautiful images. And it was just such an unique moment. And she's quite famous as well. So I guess that was good for my following. And I shot her for Universal Music. So sometimes I work with like 4 record labels as well. I also loved working with actor Jamie Campbell Bower. I photographed him just when the Stranger Things season came out, where he's one of the major characters. And he's a very humble guy, and it was a great experience.
It's interesting that what you talk about there was, it's not just the, oh, well, I've achieved this. It's the experience that you had while achieving that and the connections that you made and the fact that, it was kind of life-affirming or enriching in some way.
That's true.
Okay, so could I have your 4th number, please?
Number 9, please.
Number 9. Do you have any advice for anyone wanting to get into fashion photography?
There's a few things. As I said, I was a very shy person when I started out photography, but still, I think in our age and generation, it's slightly easier. So it's not like when my father was a photographer, you literally had to take your little portfolio and walk into an agency or walk into wherever an office to introduce yourself. And you had to be sort of pushy. But now, since we have the social media and our laptops and emails, we can just keep on like emailing people, introducing ourselves and our work to people. And like literally, I think this is the most important element, the networking element, because you can be the most talented human being in the world, but if no one's going to see your work, then, it doesn't matter. So first of all, you need, of course, a website, but I think social media is more of our website now than our actual website. So you have to keep on posting. Obviously, that helps as well if you build a follower. But again, just reach out to people, reach out to magazines, editors you want to work with, reach out to stylists, makeup artists, hairstylists, models you want to work with, and just build up a portfolio and connections. And again, just keep on emailing. And, sometimes it happens to me as well that, I don't get a response and then follow up. Then you might have to follow up again and then just try half a year later or a year later. But basically, I think that's the most important part of it, unfortunately, to put your work in front of people.
Just have to keep plugging away.
Yeah.
I like the fact that you didn't say what your dad said. We just don't. So that's good.
No, I'm not going to say that. I love what I'm doing.
That's great. That's really good to know. Could I have another number, please?
So number 1.
Okay, this question's from Liz. You can choose anyone and anywhere to shoot. Where do you go and who do you choose?
One person. It would be Iggy Pop. And where would I shoot him? I mean, I would happily shoot him in his own mansion in Florida somewhere. But, or even Chateau Marmont in California, in Los Angeles. Let's say that.
Sounds good. Okay, your final number then, please.
Number 5, please.
How do you manage models who do not pose the way you ask them to? And do you have any tips? That's from Mary.
Well, it happens every now and then, since sometimes I work with very young, unexperienced models as well, who are shy, obviously, and that's totally understandable. But every time when I have a photo shoot, even when it's with models, or even when I'm photographing musicians or famous celebrities or actors, I'm always trying to have a conversation first, and just to have this sort of friendly atmosphere. And I think it's very important to have a conversation and just but my main advice, or at least that's what I'm always doing, whenever I'm shooting, I put music on. I think shooting without music, I can't. I can, because again, we don't want them to feel it's a very serious business. And obviously, we're all taking it seriously because it's still our job, but we can have fun at the same time. So when someone is very stiff in front of my camera, I always ask them, what kind of music you want me to put on? And, that helps you relax and start posing. And of course, I always have a mood board on set as well. So I always start every shoot preparations with putting a mood board together, which contains inspirational images for lighting, for styling, for the general atmosphere, but also for poses as well. And I think it helps as a starting point when you show that mood board to a model, and you can start with a pose like that you can actually see on one of these images, and then you can start directing the model. You can give feedback, but I mean, I'm always being nice, so I guess that helps as well. I think giving constant feedback helps them feeling more and more confident in front of your camera, and eventually they start trying out different things and posing themselves as well. So yeah, just being friendly, having a friendly atmosphere and music. That's it, really.
Yeah, building a rapport.
Yeah.
Do you have a go-to playlist?
I like hardcore punk as well. So obviously I wouldn't put anything like that on because I know it's not everybody likes punk. But probably I would go with something 60s, like the Beatles, or something that is very lovely and universal.
That does sound like a good choice. Well, Wanda, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been absolutely lovely speaking with you.
Thank you for having me.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the SheClicks Women in Photography podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. You'll find links to Wanda's website and social media channels in the show notes. I'll be back with another episode soon, so please subscribe to the show on your favourite podcast platform and tell all your friends and followers about it. You'll also find SheClicks on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and YouTube if you search for SheClicksNet. So until next time, enjoy your photography.